and raise the building floor line itself would be 2 feet above that, and everything 15 feet outside the building would be 1 foot above that flood elevation.
Rod?
Has there been any core samples taken on that land to see what's underneath?
Yes. Do you want to address that, Dean? I don't know, you're not the engineer, I know, but we have the study from the last.
Basically, what has been done is been a phase 2 environmental on that.
1 and 2.
A 1 and 2. So they have done some borings out there for environmental. Some of the things that still need to be done is we still need to do a geotechnical borings out there to make sure, although I guess a good assumption would be, since there were buildings on that site previously, that the subsurface soils will support this facility.
And it is one of the contingencies in the offer to do that testing.
There were gas tanks on that at one time. Has that been addressed?
We've talked to people from the co-op, and the original phase 1 and phase 2 have shown that there is no contamination underground there. So that has been done, yes. And we have that copy of that book. It's about 2 inches thick. So Phil Kress is the person who can read that.
Janice, could you mention a little bit about the kitchen and the facilities for that?
Sure.
The hall?
We contacted the Rock County Department of Health because there was a desire to have a kitchen that wedding receptions could be served out of, the senior lunches could be served. And what we learned in talking to Roger Eichner from the Rock County Department of Health is that if you serve more than 3 meals a year in a nonprofit kitchen, you are not considered a nonprofit kitchen. You need to be a commercial kitchen. And the overall cost is about $45,000 to put that type of a kitchen in, and we included that in the price of phase 1 because that was the interest. We know that the senior lunch program will require that status. Right now, they are basically sneaking by without a commercial kitchen because they know it's a temporary situation. So we are addressing the kitchen, and there will have to be a certified food handler on staff to do that, but that's what is at the senior center right now. They hire a person through the Rock County Council on Aging who is a certified food handler to be there when the food's served to make sure the temperature is correct and everything. So all of that will continue into this new building. Chris?
How did the board and the architect decide how large the building should be for a population the size of Evansville?
I'm going to let Dean take that one.
What we did basically is we did a space needs analysis and really looked towards their vision. And which is a very difficult task to get through the nuts and bolts of doing a space needs analysis, but I was very impressed with how the leadership really got together and did that. And we have looked at other, the possibility of a banquet hall coming to this facility. Therefore, this facility is not a banquet hall. Although we did even kick around the fact that it could become, do we want this facility to be a banquet hall? And ultimately came down to that, no, that's not what we want to do. So each item in each space that is on here went through that detailed discussion, and that's how that space was determined.
And as far as the rooms for activities that are included in this, that came from a survey that Boris did in the community. When Boris first became acquainted with us, he compiled a list of residents in the community that he should talk to get their input for what was wanted and needed in the community. So that's where a lot of the information came from for the craft room, the billiards room, that type of activity, and the dance floor. That was something that the ladies in the senior program really wanted, a dance floor. Something that was very important to them, and the craft area. So a lot of the original ideas came from community input way back when we first started contacting them.
And
then
from
we
the
kind of
prime
built,
timers.
and the prime timers, yes.
We spent a lot of time with them about what they wanted to see in their facility and their portion of it.
Richard?
Is the, is the purchase of the land conditional on that map amendment being secured? Of where the, keeping the land out of the floodplain, technically?
It's one of the conditions, yes. There are several conditions that are attached that we need to be able to walk away knowing we're secure, that the land is buildable, will hold a building. I don't even recall all the contingencies, but I think we put in every contingency but the kitchen sink, so.
No, we put
That was included.
That was included.
We were being very, very cautious so that we would not have a piece of land that was unbuildable. That's why all these contingencies are built into the purchase offer. So even once the seller accepts our offer, it's not final till all these tests are met. Then it will be final. Other questions? Yes, Chris?
Have you estimated the, I'm sure you have, but I'm gonna ask anyway, have you estimated the operating costs, the monthly operating costs for phase 1 and/or phase 2? And what is that number?
We were told by another facility that is larger than this that the operating cost runs about $100,000 a year. And that facility is actually about 40,000. That was a tag center. Yes, it was about $100,000 a year, and that's over 40,000 square feet. But I don't believe that included personnel. That was just operating cost. So we figured at least $100,000 a year by the time you add in personnel and cost. And we're gonna flesh it out as much as we can as we go, as we learn from other facilities what the costs are. And we know that we will realize some income from activities within the building. And with phase 2, the pool, that will bring in more income than phase 1 would. But again, it probably wouldn't be enough to cover the entire cost. So we need to be aware of that. And there again, we are looking at long-term gifting if people want to leave stocks or bonds or other trust funds at some point in time that we can invest and have invested, such as a trust fund that has now been established through Kent and the anonymous donor. That money is there for perpetuity, and we just take a percentage off of it. And in time, we would like to see enough invested that it would cover our operating costs outside of an annual fundraising event, which would be a fun event to raise funds. So. Anything else? Questions? Yes, Jim.
Will space be made available to community organizations on a fee basis, or just a sign up to use the space? And
Yes.
I'm thinking specifically, if the Literacy Council wanted to use one room every week on a certain night for tutoring or those kind of regular activities.
That's something that we're looking into because we've had other civic groups such as the Lions and Masons, the American Legion, ask that same question. So we will be finding a fee structure so that we have a comfort level knowing that if it's a regular rental, it will be on our calendar and that it will be at a fair rate, because we want to make this very accessible to the public. So yes, that's something we will definitely consider, and that's why we have these multi-use areas so that those portable walls can be closed. 3 or 4 different activities can take place in that large meeting room at one time on a given evening. So yes, we want this to be available. That's why it is a community/senior center. We're promoting that type of activity. Other questions?
As far as the
Very good.
timeline is concerned, Dennis, what kind of funds are we looking at to start building or putting shovels in the
Okay.
ground?
We had a meeting last week between our finance and fundraising committees and discussed just that situation. What's our comfort level? What do we need in the bank before we can put a shovel in the ground? And we decided that we need to raise $1.5 million before we are comfortable enough to put a shovel in the ground and start this project. And that's a huge amount, but we know Boris did the survey of the residents and he's confident we can raise that amount. And that's just for phase 1. We'll be working on phase 2 if people want to donate to that as well. But number 1, we want phase 1 accomplished because that was on the donors list to have the senior community center up and running. So we'd like to do that as soon as possible. But we really want that comfort level. We don't want to be a burden on the community get halfway through a project and have to quit, not be able to operate. We want our ducks in a row and know that we can afford to continue.
Is that over and above the million we have
Yes,
already?
yes,
That's
because
over
that
and
money
above.
stays invested
Okay.
for an annual income stream, yes. So that will stay that way. That will not be taken out of investment for use in this project. And, you know, looking at it realistically, one person has given us $1 million. We're only looking for that 1.5 times again to get this whole project going.
Like Laura said, before the night's over.
We can do
Thank you for asking.
Take care of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
Dan.
associate Varco Pruden with steel farm type of buildings. Evidently they're experienced with brick buildings.
All three of these could answer that because you're very successful.
Have you been on Verona Road in Madison and gone past a center called the Design Mart Center?
Not recently.
This is a building that for all the world looks like one of the classiest retail establishments you're going to see. It's an absolutely gorgeous building. It's a metal building. It's a metal frame, metal shell building. You know, there's a lot of buildings you'll drive by these days that you will not recognize that are metal buildings, that are steel frame buildings with block, brick, EPIS, all kinds of dressing on those facilities to make them, you know, agreeable to the codes and conditions within a community. So there's ways of using that steel framing to keep the cost down, but there's ways of dressing up that building to make it very cost effective and attractive.
So there's a lot of buildings out there that we've done, Varco Pruden buildings, churches, schools, medical facilities, buildings such as this, so there's a whole gambit. If you look at any of Varco Pruden's literature, they have, which I have, not with me tonight, but I have it, it's a full range of buildings, and every year they have what's called a Hall of Fame, which builders send in their prized projects, and if you look, they run the gambit in there, and many of them you wouldn't even know were metal buildings.
One of the things that we want to do, though, excuse me, one of the things we want to do, and we analyze whether we should use Varco Pruden or not, is look at this facility and say, okay, this is what our needs are. Now, if we use a Varco Pruden building on there, is that the most efficient way to frame that building? And that's the one thing that we will do as we continue with this process, is to make that analysis. But we do have an open mind, and I got a good feeling that we can make of Varco Pruden a very efficient system here.
And I do have some of the VP flyers at home, the brochures that do show those buildings in the more attractive dressed up use, so I can make those available if anybody wants to see them. So I've been amazed at what you can make a steel building look like. It's very impressive.
Janice?
Yes, here's a
Anybody want
VP employee.
If anybody wanted to go into the lobby of BP, they have the Hall of Fame buildings along their wall there, and they are really good.
Other questions?
Did
Yes,
Did the
Carol.
donor specify a time when something was supposed to be started with the money?
No,
There isn't a.
no. In fact, Kent can, I think, testify to this. There were really no hard line rules and regulations involved. Just that they wanted to see a center or centers that supported senior activities in Evansville. And so we want to have this done as soon as we can because, well, we don't know who the donor is, obviously, but we would like them to see our accomplishment and how we've handled this. We would be very pleased because we do know that the donor has decided to retain naming rights to this project. So that's something that we're keeping in the back of our mind. We know that they're watching us and watching our progress. And we would really like to see this project completed, at least phase 1, as soon as possible so that this person can see how we've handled their very generous gift to this community. So there is no timeline, but we would just like to see it happen because we've been at this just over 2 years already. And a lot of people don't realize that. And it will easily be 1 more year, if not more, maybe 2. And that's not uncommon in a situation like this. But personally, I get anxious. I like to see a project done. Other questions? Malcolm?
Janice, do we get to use the $1 million outside of the interest on it?
No, that stays invested.
Okay,
There is an
so-
official trust set up and it stays invested.
So we have to get enough money, forget the $1 million,
Basically, yes.
to build this, and then the interest on the $1 million will help pay for the upkeep and the running of the situation.
Exactly. And it will provide about half of what we need for annual operation for phase one, or for phase two even, for operating costs. So it will be a big boost in getting that accomplished, but yes, we need a lot more. So this is really like seed money to
Yeah,
get the
we'd
community
never-
involved.
We'd never get the $1 million.
Nope, it stays invested for perpetuity,
Okay.
but it continues to grow.
We don't have $1 million to
Oh, nice try, Bill.
fund it. I mean, we have an endowment.
Right.
We have to be pledged to start building.
Right, so we do need money to get the building going, yes.
We have the opportunity to, as a community, to come together. We would never have had the opportunity to even be here without that $1 million that was invested, and all of a sudden they said, okay, here we go. This is, if you want to get a senior center going, bricks and mortar. Now, we have grabbed a hold of that, and with Janice, and I take no credit, I'm on the board, but no credit whatsoever. Here is what you have done, and you can be proud of that. And it's yours, You're gonna have to pay to use it, because it costs money, but it's gonna be a fantastic facility. I really am proud of that.
Thank you, Gordy. Boris?
We would expect that because of Kent Knutson's excellent investment skills, that it's very possible that $1 million will spawn some additional dollars over time. So when you say $1 million, we hope that that's the floor and far from the ceiling. Also, this will be an opportunity for other people in the community to give to that endowment, so that that generates additional operating funds eventually, meaning that hopefully all the operating funds would come from the endowment. That would be the ideal. Operating funds are among the hardest dollars, the sustaining funds are among the hardest dollars to raise. I won't say raising $1.5 million is easy, but it is not as big a continuing task as the operating funds.
Thank you, Boris. Any other questions? Otherwise, Janet?
The use of the building, that'll be extended for the communities surrounding us, because Evansville isn't just the city limits, that's not where it ends.
Right, the
I'm sure
townships.
Girl Scout groups in Orfordville, or the Albany, maybe other groups, we would rent it out to them or share it with them.
That's a possibility. We haven't looked that far, but we know that the townships definitely are included. And we've thought about the idea of using the school limits, the school district as a limit, just to draw a line somewhere. And we've talked about this because the fire district is similar to the school district, but it's not exactly the same. So there are a lot of overlapping jurisdictions out there. And it's impossible to draw a circle around it and just say this community gets served. We may have to draw a line somewhere and say anyone within this circle is considered a resident, anyone beyond it is a non-resident. They can still use it, but possibly at a non-resident fee, which may be a little higher. So all that's to be determined, but it's our intent to include as many people as possible in the use of it, because it's a community center, senior center for use by the community and the seniors, so we want to include everybody in that use as much as possible. Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll remind you that there is food in the back of the room. Please help yourself, and our board members and our experts will be hanging around here for about another half hour. please come up and look at the plans, ask as many questions as you want. We will answer them to the best of our ability. And I want to thank every one of you for being here tonight. And special thanks to all of our board members. We've been meeting twice a month for over 2 years to get to the stage we're at. And these people are doing this out of their own generosity and the kindness of their hearts. So I want to thank them very much. And thank you all for being here.